Welcome into the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. Happy Solo Shot Saturday, March 29th. Beautiful, beautiful weather right here from the ETV Community Media Center. And if you haven't figured it out already, we have a new look to the show, new look, new baseball season, same podcast coming at you every Saturday. Man, am I excited. And truly, combining, my loves of baseball and of the baseball card hobby for this new look. I'm very proud of it and excited to, run through this major league season with all of you. Definitely let me know in the comments below, what other years of Topps designs and, topics that you'd like to see on the show. We had Major League Baseball opening day. Every team has played. The Rays and Rockies ruined it. Today will actually be the first day where all 30 major league teams are in action this season. Full slate of games. But every team has played at least one game. So it is completely time for overreactions. And, it's what makes this season so exciting. 30 teams in action today. We have a whole, spring and summer and, fall to look ahead with baseball almost every single day. It's just super exciting. And if you can see, they're in the 9 hole. The Solo Shot Swag Tracker is back. 38 solo shots so far in the 2025 Major League Baseball season. There was 2, overseas in Japan, and then, the other 36 in the first couple days of play here in the States. Really excited to get into this. And we're going to keep this positive momentum on a high. We're going to start with the early breakouts. And the most obvious one is Nationals opening day starter Mackenzie Gore, who, if people remember, was part of that insane haul that the Nationals got for Juan Soto, which included their opening day shortstop, CJ Abrams, which included their opening day left fielder in James Wood, as well as Mackenzie Gore, who was the 3rd overall pick in the 2017 Major League Baseball draft. He looked the part of an ace in this thing. He lived up to the name opening day starter. I know a lot of times teams just have to throw a guy out there. And this is part of the reason why I said the Nationals in 2026, I was very high on, because I still think that they needed that true ace at the beginning of that staff to have guys like Gray and Gore kind of fall into place behind them as, solid 2, 3s, 4s. Mackenzie Gore comes out against the Philadelphia Phillies, a team, full of offensive firepower, a team full of lefties, which you would think a left-handed starting pitcher in Mackenzie Gore would do well against a team with lefties. But in years past, lefties have absolutely cranked Mackenzie Gore's pitches. He's not a guy that's in the upper 90s. He's, 95, 96. That's where he sits. But Mackenzie Gore goes out there on opening day against the Phillies. 6 innings pitched, 1 hit baseball, 13 strikeouts to 0 walks, 90-something pitches. He absolutely shoved, and he gave the Nationals a chance to win on opening day. Unfortunately, the bullpen did not hold out. Future Hall of Famer Bryce Harper pimped his 6th career opening day home run, and the rest, as they say, is history. But Mackenzie Gore showed, true ace level stuff. And a big part of it was he was in the strike zone because early in his career as a prospect, he had some injury concerns. He had the yips, and control has always been part of the problem. Last year, he had, almost a 10% walk rate as a starting pitcher. That's very high. And, he was in control in this start. And if he can build off of this, I'm not expecting him to shove, 13 strikeouts to 0 walks every single night. But if he can build off of this, become an all-star, become a front-end starter as opposed to a guy that was profiling more as like a number 3, number 4 starter, that is huge for the Nationals, as I think that team has some of the most upside and most hype across the majors, and nobody's talking about because of the 3 monsters ahead of them in the division. But the Nationals, if they have a pitcher like Mackenzie Gore showed out on opening day, they can make some noise in the NL East and be in that wild card conversation in a very stacked National League. Very excited about Mackenzie Gore. The other one that I actually talked about during my, AL preview show was Spencer Torkelson. And Spencer Torkelson, former number 1 overall pick in the draft, had a really down 2024, including getting sent down to the minor leagues. In 2023, though, he was a 30 home run bat and looked very, very exciting. But it is just extremely, extremely, promising for me to see on opening day, not only that Spencer Torkelson hit a solo shot swag, made a little bit of money on FanDuel betting on that, but he ended up walking 4 times, which, still leads the league after a couple of games of play. Spencer Torkelson, a guy who, career is a strikeout guy, walks 4 times against the Dodgers on opening day, hits a home run. So far this season, he's batting 500 in a couple games, has a home run, has a double, extra base hitting power with some patience. He's got 4 walks to 2 strikeouts. That kind of bat, he was kind of forgotten about, is exactly what the Tigers need, and is exactly why I picked the Tigers to not make the playoffs, because they didn't go out there and get an Alex Bregman or a Nolan Arenado type bat in the corner, to help that offense. But Spencer Torkelson bouncing back like this puts the Tigers squarely back in the wild card conversation. If you want to talk about early overreactions, the Tigers could easily, take that wild card spot away from the Minnesota Twins, or even, a Baltimore Orioles or Boston Red Sox if they get hot like they did last year. So Spencer Torkelson, these are high-end prospects bouncing back and, taking their game to another level. If Mackenzie Gore can find the strike zone more often and have that control and walk less guys, that's, an all-star caliber front line pitcher. If Spencer Torkelson can, walk, about as much as he strikes out, I'm not expecting it to be a 2-to-1 ratio, but if he can, make that closer, that's really good to see him being patient, but still having that power that made him a number 1 overall pick in the MLB draft. And finally, the last guy that I want to talk about, as an early breakout, isn't necessarily, the hottest pick. There's not a ton of people talking about him, but Adley Rutschman was awful in the second half last year. And this is a guy who really changed life as soon as he debuted for Baltimore, another former number 1 overall pick out of Oregon State. And as soon as he joined the Baltimore Orioles, it took almost 2 calendar years for the Orioles to lose a regular season series, get swept. During his tenure, they were winning at least 1 game per series, and Adley Rutschman, with that pitching staff and with the bat, was a big part of the reason why. He got hurt last year, had a nagging thing. During the whole second half of the season last year, he only hit 3 home runs, and on opening day, he blasts 2 home runs off of Jose Barrios as the Orioles absolutely mashed the Blue Jays on opening day. A lot of people were texting me about my Blue Jays pick for the AL East, but look at what happened in game 2, people. It's a long season. I know we like to overreact. First game, Jackson Chourio, 5 strikeouts on opening day. Oh my God, he's a bust. No, it's 1 game sample size, 162 game season. It's not as detrimental. As you look at the other sports leagues, 82 games in the NBA, there's going to be some games where a superstar player, scores 10 points and fouls out or gets hurt or gets benched. That's going to happen. In a NFL season, there's going to be some games where you see a fantasy dud from, a guy who's been consistent all year. And then, he gets clamped up by a corner and he scores 1.5, PPR points. So that kind of stuff happens in sports. And baseball, it's part of the reason why it's considered an old man's game. It's growing with younger people. I think it's because people are realizing that 1 game sample doesn't mean much. A bad month doesn't mean much. And if Adley Rutschman can get back to the kind of player that he was when people were picking him as a sneaky MVP candidate, that's huge for the Baltimore Orioles, especially when their pitching staff has taken a step backwards. And I'm very, very excited, to have him step up with Gunnar Henderson on the IL to start the year. They really need him to bounce back and be that guy in that lineup. And I'm expecting him to have, a big season. Being an all-star catcher doesn't take too much in baseball. There's only a handful of really stud catchers. So I expect him to be an all-star, but I expect him to, be a down ballot MVP guy if he's truly healthy again, which is a huge, huge win and breakout for the Baltimore Orioles. We've been waiting for him to get to that level. And, he's looking real healthy all spring. And now we see it in the first couple of games of the season. On the flip side, though, there are guys who have not looked so good. And I know, like I said, very short sample size. You can't take it for a whole season's worth of work. Guys could go out the next, 12 starts and be the best pitcher in baseball. But there is a guy who started on opening day, and, I don't think he's a true opening day starter, but the Mets had so many injuries this offseason that, Clay Holmes got propped up into that opening day role. He looked fantastic in the spring. He was an X factor for me for this team. And, I have the Mets missing the playoffs, and a big part of it is because of this pitching staff. And Clay Holmes on opening day, he got handed the loss, 3.86 ERA. That can play as a fourth, fifth starter, but he's expected to be a front end guy for them most of this season. Ended up in that game, 4 2/3 innings of work, 5 hits, 3 runs, 2 home runs, 4 walks to 4 strikeouts. He hit a batter. Clay Holmes, as a reliever, when he was at his best, the calling cards was ground balls. That amazing sinker, these breaking pitches. He's going to force a lot of weak contact. He's going to force a lot of ground balls. Another thing, as a reliever, most relievers have this, is control. He was a guy that, even though he had breaking pitches, they were in and around the strike zone, and he was forcing a lot of whiffs and, strikeouts and all those things. For him to walk 4 batters and hit a batter, have that lack of control in his first, start being stretched out, it worries me. I know we got a little bit spoiled last year with the relievers turned starting pitchers. There were so many success stories across the major leagues, from Michael King to, Jordan Hicks had a fantastic first half. Garrett Crochet was an all-star. The list goes on and on. We had, 6, 7 guys who made a pretty successful transition. I'm not saying Clay Holmes can't have a successful transition, but is he going to be successful enough where, the Mets keep him in the rotation during this whole contract? I don't know. I think he's pitching out of necessity, not just on opening day, but in the starting rotation. And I expect Clay Holmes by the end of this deal to be, the setup man or the 7th inning guy leading up to Diaz. Not saying he won't have some bigger starts. He has, weak contact ability, but 2 home runs, 4 walks and a hit by pitch, lack of control, giving up fly balls instead of ground outs. It's not what you like to see out of a guy who, was expected to be a real solid, fantasy asset and bounce back kind of guy from, a down season where he lost the Yankees closer job. Now he's looking to lose a rotation job if he continues to pitch like this. As the Mets get healthier, Manaea coming back, they're going to make a move at the trade deadline. Clay Holmes, starter experiment, off to a rough start. Now, outside of Clay Holmes, it's very hard to call someone an early bust because, a lot of pitchers just had okay starts on opening day. There was only really 3 or 4 gems that were thrown. But when you look at, the vibes for my Boston Red Sox, they were extremely high coming into the season. I picked Garrett Crochet to win the Cy Young. Not saying he had a bad start, but he definitely didn't have a Cy Young favorite start. But the real thing that I wanted to address is, our new DH, Rafael Devers. First 2 games, I know it's only 2 games. It's only 2 games. 0 for 8 with 7 strikeouts. I understand, he had the nagging shoulder injury from last season. I understand, between all the drama this offseason with bringing in Alex Bregman, that he didn't get a full spring's worth of work. I don't expect Rafael Devers to just fall off the face of the earth. He's too talented of a hitter. But there is some substance to the fact that, this game, as Yogi Berra used to say, is 90% mental and the other half's physical. Not only is Rafael Devers, not 100% physically, but the mental aspect, of a DH, you can get very checked out to the game. On top of the fact that you're, the franchise player, the highest paid player in team history, and you got moved off your defensive spot that you've played, your entire life. He doesn't look to have his head completely in the game. He looks to be trying to do too much with every at bat because he doesn't have the flow of the game behind him. And while I'm not saying that Rafael Devers is a bust for this season, I do think the DH experiment is not off to a great start. I know he's going to play, 20-ish games in the field, give Alex Bregman some breaks, get him out there. But it's a rough start, for the Red Sox. They won game one, game two. They had a couple chances to win, including Rafael Devers up with the bases loaded and he strikes out. He's trying to do too much right now and, needs the leadership of a David Ortiz. He needs to get his head back in the game. And I don't know if that is, platooning him at first base, having him and, Casas switch between first base and DH. I don't know if it's, making him play some more third base, Bregman play some second base, Campbell play some outfield. But, Rafael Devers so far as a DH, really, really rough start to the season. I'm more so worried about that than I am a Jackson Chourio at his age, playing center field, having, the ability to have 5 strikeouts in the game. That's going to happen to guys. But, just the approach, I have not seen the real Rafael Devers stand up yet. And I'm very, very hopeful that he will return sooner rather than later. Like I said, players can have a bad month and still have a great season. But there needs to be some sort of, I think mental coaching going on with Rafael Devers, whether it come from Alex Cora, whether it come from David Ortiz, who has done this same transition at the same age. It's very, very concerning for me to see your franchise player, who's been an elite hitter his whole career, come up in the biggest moments, be swinging so aggressively and just not playing his brand of baseball to open the year after everything that happened this spring. And the final kind of bust situation that I have is, Cardinal shortstop Mason Wynn, who was projected to be the Cardinals' leadoff hitter. He led off almost every single game he played last year, hit for 272 average. He had a terrible spring. But like I said, small sample sizes in baseball, it's no big deal. Mason Wynn, I was expecting him to hit at the top of the Cardinals lineup, so get a lot of at-bats. I was expecting him to increase the power, steal some more bases. And now Mason Wynn, because of the bad spring, has been moved down the lineup. He was hitting 9th on opening day. Lars Nootbaar, leadoff Lars, hit a home run. He's a guy that gets on base at a high clip. Doesn't have the speed that Mason Wynn has, but, hits for a decent average, gets on base, walks a lot. That's very concerning for a guy who is a real breakout candidate for me this year. And Mason Wynn, I'm expecting to, play better throughout the season and work his way back up the lineup where he hits, first or second, but he's not starting there right away, which means his overall accumulation throughout the season, he's not going to have the same amount of at-bats that I was projecting. He's not going to have, necessarily the same amount of steal attempts, and, the home runs are going to be what they're going to be. Here at the Solo Shot Sports Podcast, we like to throw it back down the third base line to this day in baseball history. There was quite a bit to talk about here on March 29th throughout baseball. Denton True Young, whose signature is over there on the lineup card. His birthday was on this day in the late 1800s, so happy birthday to the man they named the award after. Your 511 wins will never be beaten. 300 wins is a thing of the past, but 511 is just insane. Games finished and all those things, games started. He has all those records and will for all of eternity. Absolutely, truly remarkable pitcher. There were some retirements on this date, but I want to take this moment to just appreciate the Dodgers a little bit. I know a lot of people are, hating on them if they're not a fan of the Dodgers. Respect greatness while you have it. And the Dodgers haven't just been popular and haven't just been great since they got Shohei Ohtani, okay? On this date in March 29th, There's not one, but two instances where the Dodgers showed why they are, a beloved franchise, why they are super popular. On this date in 1983, excuse me, the Dodgers, in a league where teams were concerned about low attendance, early 80s, kind of a dead period of baseball before the steroid era started. The Dodgers became the first team in Major League history to cut off season ticket sales before opening day. In the past, teams had allowed people to buy season tickets all the way into the first couple months of the season. The Dodgers cut it off early so fans could still come and see their games if they weren't season ticket holders. That was 1983. Long after the days of Duke Schneider and Jackie Robinson, Sandy Koufax. 1983. They cut off their season ticket sales. But then, in a moment where they were playing, the 50th anniversary in 2008, their move to Los Angeles, 50th anniversary, they set the single season, attendance for a record for a single game. 115,000 fans went into the old Veterans Stadium, and they were playing the Red Sox. Of course, the Red Sox ended up winning the game 7-4. But this broke the record for most attendance in a regular season game by an exhibition game in 1959 honoring Roy Campanella after his accident against the Yankees that had over 84,000 fans. And the previous record was 114,000 patrons attending when the American team played in the 1956 Olympics in Melbourne. There was 114,000 fans. So 115,000 is still the only Major League Baseball game ever to have over 100,000 fans in attendance. And that was in 2008. The Dodgers, current stadium obviously does not have the capabilities to do so, but as MLB continues to do these overseas series and different things, I would not be shocked if that record gets broken one day. It's been almost 20 years since they held that record. But whether it be 1983 cutting off season tickets, whether it be 2008, assembling the biggest attendance ever celebrating their 50th anniversary, or even back in 1959 against the Yankees honoring Roy Campanella after his tragic accident, the Dodgers have always been extremely popular. They've been a big draw, and they will continue to be so because they have Shohei Ohtani, and they don't just have him. They have Blake Snell, they have Clayton Kershaw, they have Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Roki Sasaki and Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, and the list goes on and on. They're unreal. Mookie Betts with the walk-off last night, hit 2 home runs, including a solo shot to win the game. This team is unbelievable. And if you're hating on the greatness, you should not be. This is a team that has the ability to break the single season wins record. This is a team that has the ability to go down as the greatest dynasty in the history of baseball. And we should just be happy that we get to see this in our lifetime. A lot of people throughout the years, as a Patriots fan, I saw the hate firsthand, seen that with the 2010s Golden State Warriors. And, now you're seeing it with the Los Angeles Dodgers. People hate teams that are consistently great, and it's hard to be consistently good in baseball, let alone great. So my hats are off to the Dodgers. They're off to an amazing start this season, 4-0. I'm not expecting them to go 162-0. I know I've seen a lot of jokey reels about that, but they're a fantastic baseball team that is must-see TV. After the Red Sox game was over, I immediately turned on to the Dodgers game. I had I had rooting interest for fantasy baseball purposes on a few other games, but that was the clear draw for me, was to watch Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and the Dodgers. And of course, Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman both hit home runs after not being a factor in the team's first 3 games. This team is really, really good at baseball. And on 2008, they set the single season attendance record. And if another team is going to beat that, it'll be the Dodgers against someone else in the future. Now, I'm going to leave you with this. Make some time to watch the games. I know on, the Japan series, I was waking up extremely early in the morning to tune into the first couple innings before I had to go into work. And I know I'm an exception, not the rule, in terms of people tuning into the games and being very, very excited. This season, this Major League Baseball season, is amazing. It's a gift. And the fact that we get a full slate of games today starting at 1:05 Eastern, you have a full slate, all 30 teams in action today, whether you're playing fantasy baseball, sprinkling some money on some bets and parlays, or just watching as a fan of a player or of a team. Watch the games. Tune in. MLB Audio, I pay $30 a year to listen on my phone. Any game, no blackouts. Buy your local TV plan or buy MLB TV if you're an out-of-market fan. Watch as many games as you can and go to the ballpark. Experience these players, these teams, the atmosphere as much as you can this summer. I'm already lining up trips to Fenway and Citi Field this year to watch some of these players and teams that I love. And it is just, the most wonderful time of the year, because from now until, October, we have baseball every week. It's an escape. It's something that you can, listen to and follow completely without being able to watch it while you're, working on your car in your driveway or, doing some other work, working out, going for a run. You can listen to the game and follow it completely. That's what I love about baseball on the radio. But even if you're a visual person, find ways to watch the games in person, on TV, through a streaming platform, however you need to do it. Make sure you prioritize watching some games, especially now. This is the best part of the season because every team's in it. That's even you, Rockies fans. Every team is in it right now. Well, come the dog days of summer in July and August, there's going to be some teams that are ready to tap out and the season be over. But right now, everybody's in it. These games are going to be competitive. Most teams are going into the season pretty healthy. You see a Jeffrey Springs last night against the Mariners, who was a darling, for the Rays in fantasy a couple years ago to start the season, shove 9 strikeouts. There's going to be a lot of, stuff to overreact to, a lot of stuff to really dive into, teams that are looking better than expected, teams that are looking worse than expected. But like I said, it's a long season. And if you follow the whole story from beginning to end, it's a lot more, appealing than just reading the spark notes and flipping to the end of the page to see how the season ends. Follow the ups and downs of the Major League season. Watch the damn games. Appreciate each and every one of you for spending part of your Social Shot Saturday with me. Enjoy the big slate of baseball, not just today, but, throughout the week. I'll be back next week. Make sure if you enjoyed the show, you like the new setup, subscribe on the YouTube, comment below, with your thoughts of early breakouts and early busts from the 2025 Major League Baseball season. I love the interaction. Make sure that you leave a review if you're an audio-only listener on Spotify or Apple Podcast. It really helps the show. And you can follow me over on Twitter at DominicMana44. I'll be reposting solo shot home runs as well as giving some baseball takes and reactions throughout the Major League Baseball season. Looking forward to more solo shot Saturdays to come this season. I'm Dom Mana. I'll see you guys next week.